whose eyebrows and eyelashes are always on point. So I thought the best that I can do is brush my hair.
Do you know, you would have laughed how I looked half an hour ago. I have just gone upstairs and put some lipstick on and done my eyebrows. But I've just been in the park with Luke doing a bit of exercise. So I was a sweaty mess half an hour ago wearing some very unsightly shorts.
Well, one of the things that I love about being in Glastonbury is that you can literally wear anything and nobody bats an eyelid. It's honestly, it's one of the most freeing places that I've ever lived.
Do you know, I just love that, and I love how much colour you've got on you today. Like you've had a little bit of Glastonbury kind of like squidged into you.
I know. Well,
sometimes you can feel a bit normal walking around Glastonbury, can't you?
Yeah, and most of my wardrobe, probably like 50-60% of it is black. So it's not the weather for black. It's beautiful.
No, it is. It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. Okay, well, let's just wait for some more people to jump on.
Okay.
While we're waiting for that, just to let the people know who are coming on, we've just got a couple more minutes, and then we'll start our chat. But I don't want people to miss the beginning by starting too early.
Okay. I'm just going to put something under my table as well to make the legs a bit more balanced. There we go.
This is the best place for me to be, but I've got a bit of a beaming light in the background.
That's fine. It's nice.
I'm visible though, aren't I?
It's shining beautifully on your hair.
If I go the other way, you can see like this bit of my house where it's the entrance to my kitchen, and poor Luke has to, when I do these talks and I'm the other way, he like has to crawl past me.
I've done that myself when I used to run my breathwork from my flat. If I had in Manchester, if I had Airbnb guests or my son was there, they'd have to like walk in this narrow strip at the side of the living room.
And look what I've got here. I'm branded.
I know. I saw that a moment ago. That's on wood.
Yeah, it's on wood. My brother made it for me.
Oh.
Yeah, I'd seen someone have something similar online, and I just sent a photo of it to my brother and said, could you make something like that? And he's made it, and it's wood, but the rest is just nails tapped in and just wool wrapping around the nails. So I thought I'd put it behind me to make myself look very official and branded.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
I haven't used Zoom this way. This is new to me, where we can see each other, but I can't see anybody else. So it's unusual. So I feel a little bit like, because I really thrive from connection and engagement. So
okay, well, can you see the chat?
I can see a chat box.
Can you see that Carla's said hello?
No.
Okay, so maybe if you click the chat box, and the chat box will open to your
it has, but there's nothing showing.
Oh, Carla just said hello again. Have you got that one?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Well, she might have said hello before you logged on. That's why you didn't get the rest. So that's where everyone will join us and chat, and we'll bring them in as we go and things they say. So welcome, everybody. It is now 7:00, so we'll get started. And I just want to give a little bit of kind of housekeeping before we get set off and talk to the beautiful Steph and sharing her wisdom and knowledge and everything she has to share with us this evening. So just a little bit of housekeeping. If you haven't used Zoom before in this way, this is a webinar, and what that means is you're not on camera. And the reason I say that is because so many weeks someone said, can you see me? And my friend Libby came on the first week, and she said she had a little bit of a wobble halfway through because she decided to listen to the temple talk while she was in the bath, and then she had this freak out halfway through and thought, can you see me? So only Steph and I can be seen. No one else can be seen, but you are visible in the comments. So the chat box won't be recorded. So if you do want to share anything with Steph or I, or ask any questions, that won't be recorded, but we will bring you into the chat. So your name may be mentioned, but we'll only use you in first name terms. If that's still not going to be okay with you, and you think you will want to interact within this chat, then what I would suggest is that you change your name to a sexy little alias, and then you can be completely incognito. So just so you know that this chat is recorded, and your comments may be brought into the conversation.
That's a really good point, actually, Kate, if I could just interject, because some of the things that I'll talk about may raise things for people. So I just want to bring that into the space, that there might be things that are what you'd call triggering or activating. I want to be truthful and transparent and go with the flow with what comes up. So if anybody's responding and they want to share, and it might be deeply personal, confidentiality is super important to me as well. So I really get that.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. So yeah, please change your name if that's going to be applicable to you, but we will only use first name when we refer to your comments. The other thing is, this is interactive. It would be really great, as well as me and Steph having a chat, that you feel that you're involved in that chat as well. So please feel free to put any comments, any thoughts, anything that you'd like answered, anything you'd like a bit more development on, anything that you'd like to add your experience to. Please pop them into the chat, and I will bring, and Steph will bring in, the things that have been said. So that's that. Also, the best view to have this on is gallery view. So if you look, yay, love a good natter, says Carla. So look in the top right hand corner, and you'll either be on gallery view or speaker view. And you want to be on gallery view so you can see Steph and I at the same time. Otherwise, you're just going to be flicking between one and then the other the whole way through, and it can get a little bit disorientating. So that's my recommendation for that. And then the final thing that I'd like to say before we get going is, you all registered when you came on this conversation, and that's a really great way for us to stay in touch. However, if you don't want to be included in our mailing list when we send you a mail, then please just unsubscribe. It's as simple as that. But if you did like what Steph shares with you tonight, and she's able to give you a little bit more information from a follow-up email, but please don't feel that you're obligated in any way. Anything you want to add, Steph, before we get going?
No, just a massive thank you for inviting me, and for the people who are logging in. And please say hello and let me know who's there, because I literally cannot see anybody else beyond Kate. So it'd be really nice to get a sense of who's online. And when I'm talking, I might not. Hi.
Here they come.
When I'm talking, I might not see the chat box, because I find that it pulls me out of my flow. But I will. Hi, Emily. I will come in and chat and have a look, and then probably Kate has a system for this, knowing Kate, and then we'll be able to go through any questions or inquiries. Hi, Kate. Hello, all these lovely people that are saying hello. Jackie, Sylvia. Oh, Sylvia, hi. Oh,
it's so nice to have so many people that kind of we both know in this little lovely bubble.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So welcome everyone. I hope you're all settled. I hope you've all got a cup of tea. So the first thing I want to say is, Luke's just left me to it and brought me a cup of tea and said, "Good luck for tonight." And I went, "Oh, thank you." I said, "I'm a little bit nervous tonight." He went, "Why? It's Steph." I went, "Exactly." So for those people who don't know, me and Steph already know each other. I love her to bits, but she's also quite a sensei for me. I've learned a lot from Steph. She's inspired me. She's inspired my work. It feels like she's like a more experienced elder within this community that I'm working in. And so for me, I am a little bit nervous to be interviewing Steph, but also very, very honoured, because I just think she's so wonderful and I respect you so much that, yeah, it feels like a very special interview for me.
Oh, thank you, Kate. And, let's both just drop into our inner child place, because ultimately, yes, maybe a number of years have given me a sense of being a bit more of an elder now as well, which, let me tell you, I resisted wildly. But also, ultimately, we are all the same. All the people listening, you and I, we've all got those tender parts. We've all got the shy and the timid and the nervous. And it's just so lovely to be here, to be chatting with you.
Yeah, I'm super, super excited for everything you're going to share. So for those people who don't know Steph, Steph has been massively influential in the Manchester community. For so many years, Steph had the most beautiful smoothie nutrition shop near where I lived, where it was just like the place to go. Everyone just got their nutrition fix from Steph in that industry. So Steph's got a massive background in nutrition and everything you need to know in that respect. And then now is been just so instrumental in women's work, later in men's work, and leading sexuality workshops, and later breathworks. And now breathworks become your complete passion, hasn't it, Steph?
Yeah, breathwork and shamanism, really.
Yes,
yeah.
Shamanism, of course. And I have had some of the most unbelievable experiences with Steph, and I said in the advertisements of these sessions that breathwork is incredible. That's just very plain to see, but I think a lot of it has to do with who's driving the breathwork and the energy and the essence of that person. And the breathwork sessions that I've experienced with Steph, fucking hell, like they have been some really, really profound experiences. Like, and I said more profound than some of my medicine experiences in terms of their depth and where I've got to. So yeah, this woman is just unbelievable, and her work's fantastic. So I'm so privileged to have you. So that's the end about that ridiculously long introduction. Steph Magenta, everybody, she's here. So where do we start, Steph? Should we start at the beginning?
We can start anywhere. What's your beginning?
Well, I think maybe talking about everyone talks about an awakening, and what was that moment when you just kind of thought, fuck this, I'm doing things differently? Or what was the wake-up call that got you? Because I know that there's a history of addiction that you're happy to talk about, and also burnout. Like, what was that kind of, what can we start there at that story?
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan, I have to say, of the term awakening, and I wouldn't particularly say that I've experienced awakenings. I'd say that I've experienced evolutions. I've evolved, and I've continued to evolve and grow. And the reason I don't like awakening is because I think it sets up a precedent for kind of those who've had them and those who haven't. And when we don't know whether we've had that, I hear people talk about Kundalini awakenings and all this kind of thing. And when we don't know whether we've had that or not, we can feel somehow lesser than.
Yes.
And actually, I think that life, for me, my great challenge has been learning to become comfortable in my body and learning to live in the present moment really well. And for me, that's what I would call being awake, accepting life in its light, dark and shadow, all aspects, because you can't have one without the other. It's a law of nature. It's a law of how the universe works, and we're not separate from that, as we know. So I suppose there's been a number of moments in my life that I would say have been pivotal moments. And I guess, in terms of moving from the absolute depths of addiction and suffering and struggle into something better than that, would have been when I made a decision to leave London and change my life, because I'd been taking hard drugs for about 7 or 8 years. I was a heroin addict, and I was very, very lost. I was just living a life where I didn't know who I was. I still had a sense of right and wrong, which my mother instilled in me, thank God. She'd always said to me, Steph, there'll always be a little voice inside you that knows the difference between right and wrong, and that knows when you're doing something that isn't okay. And that's been my moral gauge and my barometer in a way. But when I was living in London, and this is going back, a long time now. How many years? Like 40 years when I first went down there, going back that long. And I was spending about £200 a day on heroin. And that's a lot of money. It'd be a lot of money now.
Yeah. This was, how long ago? 10?
This is like 35 years ago.
Wow.
Something like that.
My gosh. So how old were you? Oh no, that's a trick question to find out how old you are then, isn't it?
Yeah, but I don't mind. I'm okay about that now. I'm 59 now. I'll be 60 next year. I don't feel like that.
Well, you don't look like that either.
I've got more energy and vitality than I've had probably in a long time, but some of that is connected to burnout and stress, which we'll come to later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was 18 when I went down there, and I was 25, something like that, when I came back.
Right.
And the reason I came back was desperation. I'm not going to lie. I was lost. I was spending more and more money. I was getting involved in crime. I was selling my body. I was hiding from everybody, and I was hiding who I was. I was involved with a lot of the kind of London gangster scene, and I just, I tried so many times to get off drugs and it hadn't worked. So I kind of knew that I had to do something, because I'd always had this deep phobia of needles, which had kept me to some extent safer than I might have been in other ways that I was using drugs. And there was a point that I got to where it was like I had no money, my partner was in jail, I wasn't being able to find ways to get enough money to support my habit. And so I started considering, you know what, I'm going to start injecting, because you can get high faster and you can spend less. And there was something about that realization that made me go, I have to do something. So I called my mum, God rest her soul. She's no longer with me, but she'd been by my side all the way through it remotely. She hadn't pushed because she'd gone for advice and been told, don't question her, don't push her, because she'll run away, she'll back away from you. And she came and got me. She didn't ask any questions. She took me home. I took 1 gram of heroin with me, thinking I'll just wean myself off slowly. And I'd been taking 2 grams a day or something like that. And of course that was gone within half a day. And I went into massive withdrawals, enormous. Possibly the most painful thing that I've ever experienced, grueling. And, you know, I really have huge respect for people who transform their lives. And I understand why people can't, because the grip of it, whatever the addiction is that we're in, is not easy to break. So yeah, that point was the first point when I went, okay, what do I do now? Because I've given up the addiction, but I don't know who I am, and I don't know what life looks like without that kind of comfort blanket.
Fill all that space with, all that new space you've created, time and
exactly. All of that was just enormous. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna go and get a job in a casino. I'll be a croupier, because I just thought, well, I kind of know that world because I'd been in part in that world through my work, because I used to get taken into casinos and lived the high life for a while, if you want to call it the high life, which I don't anymore. And realized very quickly I didn't want to do that, and left and went back to art school to pursue what was one of my first loves. And I'd always been told you can't make a living doing that. And actually I really want to speak to the women who are listening here today about that, because so many of us get told that our dreams are somehow either impossible or not important, or that we can't do them. And I've been told that a lot in my life, repeatedly, you know, even by the supposedly awake crew further down the line, you know, oh, you can't give up a business, you've got a great shop, it was burning me out and it's killing me. Well, what are you going to do? I don't know, but I trust, you know, and I've always been quite fearless in that aspect, you know, mainly because I get to a point where it's untenable for me. And when something is untenable for me and I feel it in my body, it makes me ill. And I actually believe it makes many of us ill when we're not living in alignment with what we're actually feeling and what our hearts want us to do.
And that's something I really admire in you, and something I've kind of taken from you over the time I've known you, is that you are just really kind of, you're just so ruthless about that. Ruthless, I'm not sure it's the right word, but, you know, just clearing away anything that's no longer like creative and juicy. And, you know, where some of us kind of stick at things like, fuck, I've done this for 5 years, so I need to keep doing it, you know. And but as soon as something doesn't feel like that, you're just like gone, and you clear it, don't you?
Well, it's usually part of a process. I mean, it's what I'd call that warrior energy of that clear vision, and that, you know, it's not easy making changes that take us out of safety, because I think we all have a real primal root chakra need for safety, and healing doesn't take place unless we feel safe. And so we're always doing this dance between what brings us true safety, what brings us value, and can I make that step? Do I believe that the universe will provide and is generous and supportive? Or am I going to go, oh my God, no, this is irresponsible? Many of us have had messages, you know, that it's irrational, it's irresponsible, it's childish, whatever it is that we've
indulgent
had. Yeah, that one as well, you know. I mean, I'm sure many of the people listening, drop us a message in the chat if you recognize this, but it's like we've all, you know, had somebody tell us at some point that the things that we dream of doing are foolish, probably. So yeah, in a way I have developed that, but saying that, don't think that those decisions weren't weighed up, painful at times, difficult to make, or part of a process that it doesn't usually happen overnight. Because there is a part of me that can make changes overnight and then has regretted some of the decisions I've made. But that's the benefit of getting older and getting wiser, where you can step back a bit, be reflective, and sit in the pauses and just go, okay, what's actually happening for me now? You know, do I want to do that? Am I willing to take that chance? Am I willing to risk losing X, Y, Z?
And we spoke about yesterday about kind of feeling into the body and, you know, and kind of gauging things in that respect. Not yesterday, on Monday with Rachel Foy. And, you know, when you kind of do that process, for those people who think, well, I wouldn't fucking know if something's, you know, right for me anymore, like, what would that process be for someone that doesn't know how to question that, for someone who doesn't know how to make those decisions for themselves?
Well, you know, Sarah, who I know you've already interviewed, who's a really dear friend of mine, and we do a lot of work together, you know, Sarah and I often talk about finding body wisdom and starting to listen to the language of the heart, because what my mum described as that little inner voice generally is there for most of us.
Yeah.
And it will grow and grow and grow, and it will gather moss and become bigger and bigger and bigger the more we ignore it.
Yeah.
And in my experience, when we start to ignore these things, we get all these nudges, and then they get louder, and then usually there's a bam, you know, something will happen that will maybe be a crisis, and that might be the trajectory that we take. But before we get to that point, what I do is I kind of just generally have learned to sit with myself, still myself, and go, okay, actually, this is a good example, this talk, because somebody else has been inviting me to do a talk for a while, and I just haven't had a yes for it. That's how I'd describe it. I haven't had a yes for it. And as soon as you mentioned this one, I just had a yes. And how that feels is like an opening my heart space. There isn't doubt. There aren't questions. It's a yes. There might be, not in this case, but in the bigger decisions in life, there might be things that we then have to consider, but I know there's a yes there, which gives me a willingness to keep on following that path.
Yeah.
So I guess, you know, I know we're going to talk a little bit about burnout, and this is many years after all the addiction, and there were numerous wakings up, not awakenings, but numerous points where I wanted to change my life.
Yeah.
And I think one of my gene keys that's been handed down from my family has been that resilience and determination to go after my dreams, because that was in my father's bloodline as well. So there's been all these turning points, and I think they get to the point where they can't be ignored for me. And yet, when I am ignoring them, what I tend to be doing is disconnecting from my feelings, disconnecting from my intuition, disconnecting from my heart. And then, and also anybody who's got addictive personalities will know this, I will replace one kind of addiction with another, whether it's food, whether it's, in my case, it became activity. I was running a juice bar at the same time as I was doing private clients, group work, events, and running a healing center.
Yeah.
And once somebody then said to me, Steph, you're running 2 businesses invested in health and well-being, and you're not looking after yourself. And I was like, oh, it's fine, I've got this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till I actually I was sad when I let go of my shops, because I love them, those juice bars. I absolutely love them. They were just little havens of joy and delight and inspiring connection. And I love people. I really love connecting with people. So suddenly it was like I had to face the fact that they weren't profitable, and that they were taking my health, and that they were costing me more than they were giving me. I was out of balance. And in giving them up, I had to take the most enormous leap of faith. But once I'd given them up, that's when the burnout hit. When I stopped, all of a sudden, I was literally laid up for 6 months. I'd go to a yoga class, and then I'd be unable to get off the sofa for 3 days.
So it's as though the body will just keep going, you know, because you're forcing it to. But the minute you stop, it's like, oh, thank fuck, now I can stop. So it almost suggests that it was working in autopilot.
Well, it was, because I really believe that's what a lot of us do, because we've lost that connection with presence, mindfulness, our inner landscape, our true heart's desires. We've lost it. We don't live in a like our culture in the West, you know, we don't have, well, we've got First Nations people here and, you know, Celts and the original shamans from these lands. But the tribal cultures that we see and that I really emulate and aspire to be like, they have really strong systems of listening, connecting, sharing knowledge, sharing wisdom, balancing summer with winter, you know, when we need to be active with when we need to be quiet. And we don't, we just continue all the time.
Yes, it's as though we're just like quite like machine-like. There's no kind of circular way, is there? Like I kind of remember the first time that someone said to me, you know, you can behave like the seasons if you want to, and I was just like, fuck, this is like revelationary. Like I can kind of, you know, like go into hibernation when I want, and you know, but the society that I'd been born into just taught you that success and being a successful person was go 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 go, like, and the same consistently all through the month, the year, whatever.
Yeah, and many of us are feeling that now, because in this current situation we're in, where everything has had to stop, I bet you any money that some of the women listening to this will have these moments. I know I've certainly had them, where I still feel like I'm not being productive because I'm resting deeply. And I saw a meme this week, actually. It was on Monday, and it said it's okay to be unproductive in shutdown and in lockdown. And I was like, oh my God.
Yes.
Okay. Why is this so deeply ingrained in me?
Yes.
That the thought of waking up, looking out the window, going slowly, going for a walk, putting my feet on the grass and doing next to nothing else isn't exactly what I'm meant to be doing right now. How do I know that that's not bringing me well, I know it is, actually, because I can feel so many things dropping away.
Yes.
And also, you know, I was doing a piece of work the other day, Kate. It took me ages to do this piece of work properly. I'd been in quite a bit of resistance because I'm so enjoying being out and just being in nature and not thinking about work. Anyway, this piece of work took me so long, and I was like, wow, you know, no wonder stress is so prevalent in people's lives. That took me ages. And if I'd been doing that in my normal routines, I'd still be working and coaching and doing one-to-one and doing events and doing these pieces of work. But that piece of work took me all day.
Yes. Yeah. It's unbelievable, isn't it? And I think it's made me realize like how much I've been pushing myself, and then in this opportunistic period, it's almost like, well, I fucking better do something of worth, you know, I better create something and make something happen. And I'm putting all this pressure on myself that I've started to feel exhausted last week. And I remember I woke up in the morning and I was like, I do not want to get dressed. I don't want to get dressed. I don't want to start my day. And so I gave myself some time and I read my book and I made myself a brew and I stayed in my pajamas and I lounged in bed. And then Luke came up the stairs, and as he came up, I could feel this feeling that I'm so glad I caught it, because he came in the room and he just went, hiya, do you want another brew? And I felt this like guilt, like that he was judging me for lying there in my pajamas while he was downstairs working. And it made me feel really, really guilty. And it wasn't after a conversation with him that he wasn't feeling like that at all. He was like, Kate, you work really fucking hard. If you want to take a morning off, it's all right. But I thought he was judging me, but it was just me judging myself. So it was really nice to explore that and let that go and just be like, yeah, I can fucking rest. It's hard when you haven't done it.
It is. And I mean, I'm sure the women listening to this will all be in different situations, but that key feeling of I better do something valuable while I've got this downtime is really, I'm hearing that a lot, you know, like, and I actually joined in with 2 accountability groups, and I suddenly realized this week, it was like, I don't even like that word. I don't want to be accountable at the moment to anybody or anything or myself. I literally, I feel that what I'm actually doing is coming into the feminine way of creating this new paradigm. And the feminine way is really about opening and flow and receiving. It's what we do when we're in our naturalness, when we haven't got the template of what's been overlaid by culture, you know. And actually, the more I'm quiet and the more I'm still and the more I drop all of those expectations, ironically, the more creativity is bubbling up.
Yes, I find exactly the same.
Do you?
Yeah.
and it doesn't require effort.
No.
Because it's actually, you'll find that what comes is the stuff that is meant to come.
Yeah.
The stuff that really, actually, it's not work, because it's inspiring you from a true place. Excuse me. And not a, I've been burning sage and it's just got in the back of my throat.
I want to give you some of my water.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, and I feel that, you know, if there's anything that I would really, you know, want to share, many things that I want to share tonight, but if there's anything I really want to share, it's like, let's just give ourselves permission. You know, women, we hold up the world. We bring families into the world, or we caretake, or we may not have families, but we may have other things that we're taking care of. And there's been this massive imbalance for years in how we're viewed and what we're paid, you know, and I'm not getting onto a political rant about that, actually, because it is what it is. But also it's like, there's something happening collectively at the moment where we've got this great opportunity to just let ourselves be in that stillness.
Yes.
And I keep saying to people, you know, I'm speaking, yes, from a privileged position, because I've got a home and I've got shelter and I've got food. But this has been the greatest teaching and present moment awareness that I've ever had in my life.
Yes.
And like I said, I'm almost 60. I've never lived in a time like this where, you know, like when you burn out, you're forced to stop. And it's like the world has been forced to stop. Are we in collective burnout? Yeah, probably. Certainly the planet is.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so true, isn't it? And it just feels like now, you know, when I started doing my sister circles, I just had this like deep knowing that women need to rise, because women need the opportunity and the empowerment and the reassurance that it's okay to do it in the female way. It's okay to do it that way. You know, for our whole lives we've been taught the masculine way, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but it's the way that can, you know, it's not all, it's out of balance. It's not the only way to do it. And just giving women the freedom and the knowledge that they have this other way of being, which isn't marching forward, that it is retreating back. But that almost feels like counterintuitive for so many of us. We're like, well, how can I extend my business if I'm sitting in bed reading a book? Well, how can I, you know, be a successful mother if I'm, you know, doing something really, really slow and you know, I'm not creating incredible gains? And, you know, there's just so much, isn't there, that always feels like we need to be doing it that way, when there's so much to be had for doing it slow down and inner reflections. And
and I mean, I really believe that, you know, we women, we have many facets as well, because, you know, if you look at the Dalai Lama said that the future is female, that healing will be brought by women. Native American traditions now really, really honoring and revering the women, and it's the grandmothers who are leading these changes. It's the grandmothers who are at the forefront of pulling together all of these gatherings and conversation, and the men are listening. The chiefs of the tribes are listening. Other people are listening. And then you think about, you know, the women in the Celtic and Viking times, and the shield maidens and the women like that, you know, they were strong women. And they also were able to drop back into that softer place. So we're finding our identities, and there are many different aspects to that. But I think it's really about actually finding what's true for you, for each individual. And learning how to listen to that, learning how to create the space to just go, oh yeah, I've been pursuing that. I had a conversation with a friend last week, and she lives down here. She runs a space, and she'd sent me a load of information about this space and was saying, you know, are you interested in getting involved? And I hadn't had the time to look at it, so I sent her a message, and I said, oh, you know, I've got some time on Thursday, so I'm going to sit down and look at it. And she sent me a message back, and she just said, Steph, if it flows and if it brings joy, look at it. If it doesn't, let it go. That's absolutely fine. That's how it's meant to be. And she's just such a, she follows her joy. She laughs constantly. She's delightful. And I suddenly went, oh yeah, I'm still doing that. I'm still in the should mindset of what I think I need to make time for. It's bloody tiring.
Yes. And I think we need to forgive ourselves for that as well, because if that's been a lifetime job, that, you know, there are going to be times when we go back to that way of being, into the shoulds.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I've just had Jackie with a big yes when we were talking about kind of like laziness and you know the difference between slowing down and us feeling like we've got to justify it, as Carla said. Then you feel that you need to justify yourself. Yeah. So can we move on to breath work, Steph?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your first experience with breathworks?
Well, ironically, I was I'd been working with plant medicines, and I'd had several profound experiences with plant medicines, which all of which led me to Bali, because that kept coming up for me in these ceremonies, that it was kind of like a soul home and I needed to go. And I went over to Bali, and
sorry to interrupt, when we're talking about plant medicines, ayahuasca and
all of that stuff, yeah, many different forms of it. Anyway, I went over to Bali, and because my passion is in raw food and juice bars, I'll seek out places like that whenever I travel. And I found this amazing juice bar in Ubud called Alchemy, which was co-owned by Anthony, who set up Alchemy of Breath. And I didn't know about Alchemy of Breath at this point. I just knew about the juice bar. And then a friend of mine, actually, many of the women who are on this call might know her, and you do, but Rebecca Wilson had stayed at Alchemy. They had a retreat center called the Ark, and at the Ark, she said to me, "Oh, Anthony's got a juice bar and he does breath work." The breath work didn't land, the juice bar bit did. So we had a conversation, and I said, "Is there any chance I can come and volunteer for you and just get some experience in Bali, and I'll do it for free?" And he said, "Well, actually, you know, we always give our work to Balinese people, to the people who are local in the area," which I thought was amazing. And I said, "Oh, no worries." And he said, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I had a juice bar, but now I run events and things. What do you do?" "Oh, I'm a breathwork teacher." "Oh, that would be interesting. Maybe I'll get you over to come and do something." So
and so at this point, did you know about breathwork at this point?
No.
Did you know what it was? Because I remember the first sign, I was in India years and years ago, and there was a sign on the street that said breathwork. And I remember thinking, who needs to learn how to breathe? And I remember thinking it was just some really like, you know, just wishy-washy workshop that was going on. So
I know, I can relate to that. And no, I didn't really know about it. I mean, I knew about pranayama, and I knew about kind of, you know, working with the breath on certain levels, but not the conscious connected stuff.
Yeah.
I just had a nice connection, and I wanted to host him.
So you went along and you did some volunteering with him?
No, I didn't do the volunteering,
okay.
and I didn't go to Bali at that point. He came to the UK, and he came to do a workshop on my friend's land, which I put together. And of course, because I'd put it together, I also got to experience it. Now, at that point, I thought it was amazing. I noticed things about myself, but it kind of was put somewhere in my, it was just like, oh, there's an experience I've had. That was quite interesting and very profound. My friend Susie was so moved by it that she went straight into the training.
This is Susie Poyser.
This is Susie Poyser,
okay, right.
So she went off to do the training, and then I went back to Bali, which I really, really wanted to do because I just love it so much there. When she was graduating, I went to Bali. Anthony and Amy then said, "Well, you can stay at the Ark, you know, and we'll give you a really, really super reduced rate because, you know, you put us up for our event," and yada, yada, yada. And every day they had free breathwork sessions on there because the students were graduating. So I got to experience one. Now, I just started training then in craniosacral therapy because I'm a body worker as well. So I'd started my training in craniosacral therapy, went and had this breathwork session in the Ark, and honest to God, like, it blew the lid off everything. I've never experienced anything like it. My whole body was energetically like tingling, alive. All of this old stuff came up that I'd been carrying about all those years of addiction and selling my body. It just all came up and out. And I'd worked with plant medicines up to that point, and I was absolutely staggered that I could access the same kind of frequency and energy and pain as I had
from
in
your
plant
own
medicine.
breath. Yeah,
but be embodied. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. It was that learning for me, actually, because, you know, I have had some incredible experiences with plant medicines and, you know, really acknowledge their amazingness. But for me, it was always like such a push through fear to get there, to get into the space, to drink, you know, to be in those circles. It was just like, fuck, this is so hard. This is so hard to push through and get myself into those things and think, oh my God, I've got 8 hours of this and that kind of thing. Although it doesn't matter when you're in it, does it? Because there's no time. But however,
but that's why it's painful as well.
Yes, exactly.
Because you're like, oh, it's never going to end.
But then to be able to experience something on the same scale that you could A, access from your own breath, and B, be able to get the fuck out of if you didn't want to be there anymore, was just revelationary for me.
Yeah. And that's the key, Kate, because it's embodied practice. You're in your body, you can self-regulate. And I don't believe it's particularly helpful to put people into trauma situations where trauma comes up again and then not have integration protocols. That used to be one of the things that bothered me about a lot of the plant medicines, that there was no integration practices and protocols and support afterwards. And I know we're all autonomous beings and we need to take responsibility for ourselves. You know, I don't necessarily have that with my breathers, but I will guide people to, if I can see that people are tripping on the edge and their nervous system, because the nervous system will shut down if we're in that absolutely primal fight, flight, freeze,
and we can re-traumatize.
But then again, you know, like I say, you know, that there's good practice and there's less good practice everywhere. And one of my really big things with all of my work is, how do I foster good practice and professionalism? Because some people go into breath work and they're just going, oh, what you said before, it's just breathing. Anybody can do it. I don't need to pay and go and do a training in breath work. I can just do this.
Yes.
But the contraindications and the things that come up both psychologically and physiologically are actually really, really serious.
Yes.
And if they're not held by people who are trained, I think it's irresponsible.
Yeah, and practitioners have got to be able to know that what they can open in people, it's not a case of just knowing how to explain the practice and off you go breathing. It's a case of knowing if something comes up, am I equipped to hold this shit? You know, am I able to manage someone's pain, trauma, you know, experience? Am I able to be there for them? And the second bit of that is, I think that the more you've learned how to be able to do that, the deeper people will go, because they can feel, they don't have to know it. I see your credentials, they can feel it. And I know that the deeper I go, the deeper the work I've done, I'm able to hold people at a much deeper level. And I think because of that, people are able to drop in deeper. And that's why when you're holding, I feel like, fuck it, I can do whatever. And literally, I'm in the depths of all sorts. I mean, the last breathwork session I had with you was like a half-hour version, like a half version of it. But fuck me, Steph, I went so deep in that one. Like,
I remember that.
Yeah, my God, it was like the night before I was having my my implants taken out, and I hadn't mentioned it to you, had I? Because I can't talk about it anymore. I just came in and did all this releasing. There was shit that didn't need in my life anymore. It was amazing. And then Steph the next day was like, okay, now I know what last night was about. The releasing before the explantation. But anyway, just for those people who are like, what are you talking about? I don't even know what breathwork is. Can we just kind of rewind a little bit and just have like a fairly simple explanation of breathwork and its benefits?
Yeah, there are many, many different kinds and forms of breath work. So I have a Facebook group and there are lots of people in that, and some of them are rebirthers, transformational breath workers, pranayama practitioners through yoga. We've got yoga people listening, I know, Emily's one, and it's just kind of, and then there's conscious connected breath. And conscious connected breath, which is what I do, is similar to transformational and similar to rebirthing and similar to these other forms. And it's where you are consciously using your breath in a ongoing cycle. So you're charging the system. And what you're actually doing is activating your sympathetic nervous system. So other forms of work, for example, in pranayama or coherence breathing, may activate and bring in the parasympathetic, which is the part that's responsible for rest and restore. So it soothes your nervous system. So you might go, well, why would anybody want to do anything that activates the sympathetic and puts us in fight, flight, or freeze? And my response to that is, it's because that's what brings the healing. So, it's a decision to say, right, I'm going to allow myself to experience something that has the potential to actually dig up some of this stuff that's still in my body. Like I said, I was there, I was in Bali, it was a free session. All I was doing, and it's an open mouth technique, and it's continuous. So it's kind of, to anybody who's watching who doesn't know, it looks a bit like this. It's like, so it's a cycle, and there's no pause, which is where the work comes in, because it can feel like effort. And what we're doing with that is we're bringing in so much oxygen into the system that carbon dioxide levels, which normally are quite balanced, there's an exchange of the two. Carbon dioxide drops low, oxygen raises high. The sympathetic nervous system gets activated. Often the physiological symptoms like tingling or tetany in the hands, where you get these little claws, that can be a result of simply the changing levels, the massive drop in carbon dioxide, which is safe. It's not unsafe, unless you have any of the the conditions that you, what do we call them? Forgotten the word now. I use it every week and it's gone out of my mind. But unless you've got any contraindications, that's the word I wanted. We do that if I do it online, I usually do it for 30 minutes in my Saturday morning sessions. But if I'm doing it one-to-one or in groups, it's usually about an hour of breathing in that way. And commonly what I see is that people go into huge releases, because the only times in our life when we really start to charge the system like that and go into the sympathetic is when we've experienced shock, trauma, grief, loss, fear, anxiety, tension. And so the unexpressed and unresolved stuff that lives in the somatic library of the body, because we record everything. We're energetic beings, and and I know this through even years of 5 rhythms dancing, you do a movement and suddenly you're in a memory of somebody, raising their hand to you or something, and it's and we relive. And so in the breath work, what can happen is that we're just lying down, we're breathing, and people will start crying and emoting and shouting and wailing and sobbing or trembling, spontaneous trembling. We were covering this last night because I offer breathwork training, and I run it with a woman called Dr. Ray Riddell, who's just a phenomenal woman, a doctor of chiropractic and functional medicine. And last night we were doing anatomy and physiology of the breath, so what actually happens in the system, because some of the more new age approaches to it might be a little bit like, energetically, what are you holding on to, you can't let go of? And yes, there might be an element of that, but also maybe it's just that you've gone like that because your carbon dioxide levels are low and your diet is low in certain minerals and certain calcium. If you're low, I've never had tetany ever once. And yet other people, every time they breathe, are in absolute like this with their hands.
Yes. Do you remember that time that I described how much I went through it because I knew I had so much shit to let go of, that particular breathwork session when we were on the sexuality weekend, and I was literally like this at the end. I was like, Steph, my mouth was like a bum hole like this.
That's a really good description, because that is another thing that people experience, their mouths, because the cramping that you can get in your hands can also there are things called the Reichian belts of tension. There's 7 of them that run across the body. So the mouth, the one across the jaw, the ocular one, commonly it's where we will have experienced a lot of tension. Maybe, especially for women, our throat centers haven't opened, we haven't said no, or we've been violated or abused, or we've experienced things where we've never been able to get the words out.
Yes.
Little girls should be seen and not heard, or as older women, kind of maybe we've experienced these violations and we've never had the opportunity to rage or go, get the fuck off me, or whatever it is.
Yes. I had years of that in my system, years of just like, yes, get the fuck off me.
Exactly. So I'm not surprised. And this is how sometimes these particular areas of tension in our body will hold different energies. And, you know, if it's in the gut and there's things that we can't digest, or if it's in the heart, you know, because we've armored our heart and it's not safe to open it, or it doesn't feel safe. I just saw a question, by the way, in the chat box about how do you find a qualified person? I went to someone who wasn't qualified. And yeah, you see, it makes me so mad.
There's a lot of people using breath work, isn't there, that just kind of, you know, they've been to a session and they think they can add it on, and it is a little bit of a dangerous thing. And, you know, and I've started using breath work only recently in mine because I'm training under Layla Martin, you know, and I'm 7 months in my course. And when you get to 7 months, she advises that you can implement some very, very simple breath works. I wouldn't have used it before just because I know the depth of where breath work can take you, and you've got to be able to hold that.
And the thing is as well, the other thing I'd say is, and I'm assuming that Layla does this, but anybody who is bringing in breath work of this kind, the dynamic breath work, really needs to understand, you know, epilepsy, schizophrenia and psychosis, heart conditions, high and low blood pressure. I'm experienced, and I had somebody go into a fainting fit in a session because they had a tendency for low blood pressure with fainting, but they hadn't named it at the beginning of the session. I thought this person was having a full-on stroke in my session. And if I hadn't had that experience and knowledge of how to touch or how to hold, even then, you know, it was like, whew, there are people out there, like you say, and like Carlos just said, who are tagging things onto their session. People offering yoga postures and things, who don't understand people's bodies and where the edges are. So to answer what Carla said there, I think it was Carla, you know, how do you find a qualified practitioner? Ask people, where have you done your training? What are the contraindications for this kind of work? If they can't answer those questions and they can't tell you, or they don't tell you, or they're skirting around your direct questions, then you know, I would say, like, just don't go there. You know, there are plenty of people who are trained and certified, and as I said, it's become a bit of a fashion that people in new age work think that you don't have to do training and you don't have to hand over money and anybody can do it. And I feel like that's not the case, because if you value, like, I wouldn't just go out there with my shamanic practice. I think it's really disrespectful to go out there and start using, you know, soul retrieval or certain exercises and not honor the teacher and honor the teachings and where they come from. There's an arrogance. It's like, how do we learn? We learn from people who've put the time in, who've done the research, who've got the knowledge, who care about this stuff and who care about the people they work with, because anybody can make a buck. And anybody can, you know, it's not about us. And you know, I own this as well. Like, if I had sessions where I felt people were, everything was kicking off, I think I'd done a good job. But that was stroking my ego as much as anything else, because it's like, what about where nobody's having a response that looks really dramatic and obvious, but they could still have released something profound? So always coming back to checking in, you know, with ourselves, like, who is this for? How is it helping?
And, you know, I've got a question. I found with a lot of practices, breathwork included, that the more kind of, I don't know, that as the older I've got and the more I've fallen into myself and already releasing, doing lots of work that releases, doing my own inner work and all of that, that breathwork's become more and more powerful. And then I've got Luke. Luke loves breathwork just like I do, but he doesn't have very powerful releases. So I'm saying that almost with quotation marks, very powerful releases, because I'm sure whatever he has is exactly as he's supposed to have. But he's lying next to me sometimes and he's like, fucking hell, like, what is going on with you? And I'm like crying and wailing and releasing, and so there's part of me that's almost, I've got this, and I'll be really honest, there's a little bit of smugness. I'm like, you just need to let go, Luke, you know. You're just not as ready as I am, you know, to release. And then there's another part of me that thinks, fuck, maybe I've just got so much shit to let go of, and he doesn't.
Yeah, there's that as well. That's very humbling, isn't it? It's like, and you know, I say to people, especially if they're coming to numerous sessions, let go of all expectations. If you've had a peak experience, don't go chasing it. Yes. If you've had nothing happen, don't just assume that that's what will happen again, because again, it's like, in the present moment, everybody's body is different. We're affected by our food, we're affected by hormones, we're affected by our cycles, we're affected by what's going on in our lives.
Yes.
And yeah, sometimes there's more baggage to let go of and to bring up, and sometimes there's less. Yes. And sometimes we don't always know what it is that, you know, I've seen people where I've looked and thought, oh, you know, I've gone up and at the end of a session said, oh, you know, I'm sorry, maybe that didn't work for you. And then they've been like, what are you talking about? That was really deeply profound. Or I haven't actually sometimes said the words to them, but in the share, when it's looked like they've received nothing, they've been the people who've been moved the most.
Yes.
So we don't always know what people are connecting with or doing in a session, and we don't need to know. There are times when we really do, and there are times when, like you say, you know, we've got some work to do and it just needs to come out, and it's better out than in. So yeah, I think for me, what I experienced for myself and what I repeatedly saw happening for other people made me really clear that I wanted to train, wanted to offer it. It became my life's work, and then I knew I wanted to teach it. I knew that that was my path, and it really is. It's like, it's so clear for me. And even now in this shutdown, I'm going, what are the things that make sense for me in my life that I'm true to? And the breath work and shamanism, nature-based practices in shamanism are the two key things. And all my juicing and detox knowledge and experience, and my bodywork knowledge and experience informs that. But they're my kind of like, they're like my safety nets or my comfort zones, if you like. You know, I know I can make a juice detox for somebody, and I love doing it. And I know I can make kombucha for people and clean food if somebody's got a party. I can do like raw vegan stuff and that. But actually, my real desire is to continue to develop my practices with breathwork and shamanism, and to keep developing skill.
And can we talk about shamanism? Because we've only kind of got like 10-ish, 15 minutes. It doesn't matter if we go a little bit over, but we're really lovely to talk about shamanism because it's such a fucking amazing subject. And, you know, I love it. And I've attended some of the kind of shamanism training with Chris, and, you know, because he's been your teacher. So can we talk a little bit about that?
I love him.
To ask, but just, he's just incredible, isn't he?
He is the most humble teacher I've ever worked with. He is a pure channel.
So for those people who don't know, who we're talking about, Northern Drum?
Northern Drum is the school of shamanism, and Chris is from Denmark, and he went through all of his trainings and initiations after a near-death experience that took him to North America, where he did all of his vision quests and his pipe carrying and everything else through with the Lakota people and many other tribes in North America who recognized him as a student and who welcomed him in. And
this guy is amazing. Like you meet him and it's like he's just this walking wash of peace and just absolute truth, isn't he? And there's just no bullshit. I mean, he turned up to do that weekend in jeans and a hoodie. You know, and like, so I've been to some stuff and there's nothing wrong with that, whatever you choose. But, you know, you get some teachers who are teaching in full shamanic, like, you know, traditional clothing, and just the fact that he just struts in a pair of jeans and he's just like, you know, just no airs and graces, just like, I'm here to teach you and this is what I'm here to teach you. And it's done with such beauty and love and integrity. He's just amazing.
And he's given me some of the most humbling lessons I've ever had, because when I first started training with him, which was 6-7 years ago before my mum died, in fact, it must be more than that. I remember we were going out on a shamanic walk and I'd picked up a feather in the woods on the pathway and I stuck it in my hair, and he told me off and he said, can you take that out of your hair, please? You know, feathers are a symbol in native culture that are really earned by honor and practice. And if you're going to be a student, and he didn't say it in any, you know, he told me, my cheeks went red, I felt really exposed and embarrassed, but I've never forgotten that lesson. And now it's given me huge respect. And he was actually talking about that because I'm on an ongoing training with him, and we've just done a module where he was talking about his teachers and the hard lessons that have come where he's been almost not humiliated, because it isn't humiliation, it's that grandmother energy again. It's that stern, you know, where he said his visceral lessons have landed with him the most, you know, because it's been the most clear.
And so what did he mean by that? You know, because like, you know, putting feathers in our hair could be done in such a kind of, you know, innocent way. Was you saying that it was, you know, in shamanism it's
that basically it's kind of like, one, if you're in your shamanic practice, I mean, people do it all the time, you know, we might put feathers in the hair. I do it sometimes when I'm just not engaging in my shamanic practices and I'm not teaching, or, you know, I might have like a little feather somewhere or other. But, you know, it's like basically what he was trying to teach me, and what he did teach me, was the difference between, you know, when you see people who are uninitiated and haven't done the rites of passage, and they might be sitting with the, you know, the tall feathers in, or a headdress or something else.
I
He
see.
was talking about, basically it's about cultural appropriation, and where we take things from a culture, which in the West we're very good at. We've colonized so many cultures and peoples without having an awareness of giving something back and reciprocity. And I even, you know, I struggle sometimes when I'm running sweat lodges, because I'll be going like, oh, you know, have I got the right to do this? And am I, you know, how am I contributing? Am I taking something from a culture that doesn't belong to me? And Chris still sends money out to one of the elders in a reservation that he works with, and some of the students donate from the events that he does. You've probably seen that bowl that he had on his altar. And you can, in an ongoing way, you can donate money, which I do now as well, so that I know that some of the money that I'm making from these studies is going back to where it's supposed to go from. Anyway, that was a diversion. But shamanic practice for me is a way that I can work with a deep appreciation and gratitude for life, for all of life, for every phase of life, for every being, for nature, for the cycles of nature and the cycles of change, becoming an elder, the value of children, being humble, not taking more than we need. It's a very beautiful and humbling way of living in right relationship
to the earth, to each other. It's fascinating, isn't it? Like, you know, sometimes shamanism can feel so far away from a lot of people, but actually sometimes when you learn a lesson of wisdom of how we should be living in relation to the seasons, in relation to the weather, in relation to animals, in relation to one another, so much of it is shamanism, isn't it? So much. It's just a shamanistic way of life. It's such a beautiful, beautiful way of living and way of seeing the world through that like shamanistic lens.
And you know, the druids of these lands were shamans. You know, there's very close connections with many of the ancient practices. You know, they lived in relationship with the sun and the moon. They lived in relationship, and they built temples in relationship to the stars. The shamans have a relationship with the stars and the star nations, and you know, kind of observe signs and symbols in nature, which is what druids would have done as well. So we do have these practices embedded in our culture. And I guess for me, you know, I'm sure it came through all of my experiences of addictions and everything else, but I've just always had this ability to tap into other dimensions and other realms. And I find it quite easy, you know, even through my 5 rhythms, years of doing that, like 20 years, the teacher used to say to me, oh, you go into sort of trance dance quite easily. And it would just be, I can let myself be taken by spirit. And then within shamanism, there's a million different things that people can do within that as well. You know, some want to work with the ancestors, some want to work clearing spirits and helping them pass on, or with death. Some want to work with soul retrieval or feather blessings and gentle forms of healing. And it's like anything else, you know, you find what calls to you and you can leave the rest behind, really. Not necessarily in shamanic practices, but in life in general.
And during that weekend when Chris was talking about the full shebang training, which you're on at the moment, where you're training and the full shamanic, you know, stuff, he mentioned that there's some initiation in the course that just literally made the hairs stand up and made my heart pound. And I was like, I feel like one day I'll do that, because you know that sick feeling. Like I remember when years and years ago I watched a Bruce Parry documentary on ayahuasca, and it made me feel sick in the same way. Like I'm going to do that one day. Like that kind of, that's really like scary, but exciting and all of that. And he talked about the burial. Can we talk a little bit about that? And then I'm aware that I'd really love to do the little meditation that we talked about.
I mean, it's not an easy subject to talk about quickly, but basically,
can you tell me in 10 seconds?
I mean, the burial is literally a kind of letting go of the old you, and is facing your mortality, because most people would be up. You're literally, you dig your own hole and you spend the night in the earth in this hole. There's usually a liner so that you don't get absolutely freezing cold. You may well go in with a small torch or something in case there's any reason that you need to get out. There are people who are watching. You're not just left. They don't just bury you and walk away, as in, what was that, Kill Bill, where she was buried alive.
But you have the earth on top of you.
Yep. You literally go in, and there's wooden planks, and then you're in total darkness inside the earth. And
wow,
of course, as you can imagine, Sarah's done it. She's done the burial. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I always wanted to, but they weren't running at the time. I've done a vision quest with Chris, and that was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. That was harder than ayahuasca. It was harder than giving birth. It was like, it really tested me. Really.
And a vision quest is going out into the forest and being alone and...
Yeah, usually into the mountains, in a remote space where you don't see anybody else, and you just have like a 6-foot circle. And you might have, in the desert, they do it with just a tarpaulin, but in the UK, we do it just in a 2-man simple tent, and you have no food, limited amount of water, and you just spend usually like 3 or 4 days literally on your own in this tent. And, it's kind of like, it's almost like Vipassana in nature, but without food and without people and without anything.
Yeah.
And you're seeking your vision.
Yeah.
Your life.
And having done a kind of 10-day Vipassana, I know I can even just kind of see it in like some small way. But yeah, you're right. We had people around and food. And so you just literally, what came of that? Like, what were the biggest takeaways from that experience? Because I know from doing like silent retreat, like, how fucking amazing it was to be reunited and be able to speak afterwards, and the clarity of mind, and I was walking on air, like it was amazing. But that is like next level, isn't it?
Well, I think they're all next level in many ways. Like what we get from all of these practices is self-awareness, self-mastery. We have to face ourselves, whether it's Vipassana, whether it's plant medicines, whether it's breath work, whether it's shamanism and the vision questing or the burial. It's about facing ourselves. And, we're very complex as human beings, aren't we? It's like, yeah.
Emily's post sounds horrendous, but then I guess so does Vipassana, so to some people.
Yeah, indeed. And, I mean, it depends. Again, it's like finding the people and the places that you want to go. And I would trust Chris with my life.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
Honestly.
Me too.
And I'm really excited actually, because we're in these modules, and I really know that I love working with ancestors and psychopomp and the dying and those kind of realms. And I had so many questions this weekend because that's what we were doing, but I couldn't keep interrupting. So I messaged him and I said, look, do you offer mentoring, like one-to-one? I'm not undervaluing the group, and I really value it. And I know you're really busy, and I'm sure I know that the answer is going to be no, but I really want to do some more focused work around ancestors and psychopomp. Anyway, he's come back and he's agreed.
What's psychopomp?
Psychopomp is helping people who've passed go to where they're meant to be. So when you're working with stuck spirits and stuck souls, or people who've died suddenly or tragically, or with trauma, or lost souls that are stuck between the realms, in shamanism they'd call it that.
Right. I just think it's such important work. Like when people told me about like death midwives, I've just been like, why the fuck is that not a thing? Like, it's the most important passage of them all, and we have midwives that help women to bring babies into the world. Why is there no one spiritual, like helping and enabling, or not even spiritual, whatever that person needs, well, and I'm sure it's all spiritual, but just having someone that sends us out, I mean, I want to go out with a ceremony, I kind of want to go out, okay.
I know.
Maybe a little indulgent. But, I want it to be meaningful in some way,
Yeah, and the shamanic perspective on this is that when we die and we return to what they call the happy camping grounds, or the green fields, that we have to go through several rites of passage in order to get there, and that we have to meet ourselves, and we meet our fears, and we meet all of the stuff that we didn't do in order to pass through these different levels. So having a death doula there, or having a psychopomp person who can help, I mean, that would be after death, more with psychopomp rather than dying. But
right, it's after death. I see.
Yeah, I mean, I just love all that stuff.
Yeah,
really love it.
Absolutely fascinates me. I can actually see myself when I'm older working, like, I can see myself in my elder years working a lot with dark energy and death, but bringing dark into light and working kind of down there. I can see that kind of bubbling somewhere. And there was one of our modules that we've just done on the Layla Martin course recently, which is really coming to terms with your death and your own mortality, because we don't have that system in our culture at all. So we're all scared shitless of dying. And this is really relevant at the moment, isn't it? What with the kind of the coronavirus and this, like, many people are starting to kind of, think, okay, well, maybe we need to be thinking about our mortality a little more. And one of the modules was, one of the classes was, we had to do a meditation and imagine our final moments and our funeral and who was going to be there, and see it through. And that for me was such a magnificent process. I can imagine, it's only a small part of the experience of the burial, but it's the same essence, isn't it, of kind of really coming to terms with that. So that you can, the more you're aware of death, the more you can be aware of the fact that you're actually fucking alive. Exactly.
Yeah. And gratitude is the biggest healing practice within all of that. Creating a space where we sit and we give thanks. Thanksgiving is a huge part of shamanic practice. That it's not about just what we take from either the earth or from each other, but it really is about what we give back and what we appreciate. And actually, that's been one of my greatest healing tools ever. Refocusing and retraining my mind to be really grateful for what I've got, the smallest things. Like now, every morning I come in, before I do anything, maybe not brush my teeth or have a pee, but I come and I sit at my altar and I light sage and I give thanks to the 7 directions, and I sit and I connect with them, and then I give thanks for the day, and I open my curtains and I just go, I am so grateful for this day, because it's now, it's this moment. We're all postponing our sense of achievement and fulfillment constantly. It's this never-ending loop where the carrot's always at the end of the stick, instead of just going, oh, hang on a minute, this day that I'm living now, that you and I are in right here having this conversation, will never happen again. This is it.
And that is all there is. Just now that is it, isn't it? There's no yesterday and there's no tomorrow. Like, now is all we ever have.
Yep.
And a lot of the time we're just not in it. We're either thinking about the past or thinking about the future. And it's so precious. It's so precious to be in that moment, in that time of now. They did a study on, I mean, this might be a potential digress, so we don't need to go into it, but just very briefly, they did a study on prisoners, and they helped prisoners to become really in the now, and rather than the fear that they were going to be entrapped for a certain amount of time, or the regret and the guilt of what they'd done in the past. These were the areas of pain, but when they allowed them to come into this present moment of the experience of now, they were able to become really at one with themselves, with their own experience of living, and to heal within that now as well. It's a really beautiful study.
That sounds amazing. Yeah, and I really feel that actually is where the healing is, in bringing people into present moment awareness. Our breathwork training, the foundation of it is a book called The Presence Process. It's really profound, and it brings up everybody's stuff, everybody's resistance, everybody's suffering, everybody's struggle, all comes up when you work through what it truly means to be present. Because when we're in that, then there's no projection, there's no blame, there's no judgment, there's no nothing. We have to take responsibility for who we are and the lives that we're creating for ourselves and the experiences that we've had. And that's another essence of shamanism. You know, my teacher, Chris, he'll talk about let the wind blow through you, where we don't get attached to these stories. We don't get attached to the feelings, but we learn to allow them to pass through. Everything is a lesson. Everything is a blessing, even the things that are difficult and hard that we have to go through, because my story has become my medicine. Your story is becoming yours.
Yeah.
It's only when we get lost in it that we're struggling and that we can't get out. And that's when we need help.
And then when we're holding on to that story with a fucking iron fist, because it's, you know, it's the thing, isn't it? It's also, you know, I've had so many of my own that I've just been like, I fucking need this story because this story makes me me, and this story allows my, you know, my apology or what I can't do. And sometimes we can fucking hold on to them so hard.
Yeah.
To let go of them means we might potentially have to be our best self, which is scary as fuck.
Well, yeah, and also when we let go of them, we're in the death space. When we let go of drama, when we let go of story, when we enter emptiness, we're in the death space. And, you know, I've been in so many relationships in my time that have been laden with drama, which I have obviously co-created. And I've noticed that when that drama has stopped, I've just felt like there's nothingness. And it's been really difficult. That was part of my burnout, and part of my teaching was, oh my God, I've got an addiction to drama that I didn't even recognize I had. I've got an addiction to struggle.
I totally had an addiction to drama and struggle. Totally. It's all I knew. It's all I knew. Yeah, it was default. I thought that was normal.
Yeah, well, most people are. And I'm super aware of the time.
Yes, me too.
Like, I think we've run over loads.
We have, but I could just speak to you all night, and I'm sure no one else is kind of, you know, too bothered about that because no one's dropped off. Everyone's with us. Is everyone still here? Can we hear? Yeah, loving it, says Sylvia. Yeah, can we have a bit of you guys? We need you in here. Let's have some more stuff. So Augusta was, when we were talking about the death stuff, she said it's so relevant because this generation has Pluto and Scorpio, so a bit of astrology there. Thanks, Augusta. And so it's here to transform taboos like sex and death. Yes. Death doula sounds so needed. Jackie said it's been really great. Thank you both. But so before we go, can we do a really, really like kind of ending? But I know the directions is usually your beginning. Like you said, it's how you start your day. But can we use it as an ending?
We can use it as an ending because one, it will close my space because I opened it this morning. So it's a nice opportunity. And also I'll do it in a certain way where I'm not calling all the spirits in, because then we have to close properly and everything. But we can just do it in a kind of a soft way of meditating with it. And thanks, Emily, for that lovely comment. Love you too. Okay, so
Emily.
What I'm going to suggest then is that we just take a moment to close the eyes, wherever you are. Whatever
Can I just say,
experience.
before we get really settled into this, I just love the fact that there's like, you know, just all these women in all these different spaces, but so together in this meditation right now. It just makes me go, oh. Sorry.
Oh, well, this is it. Now. This is the spirit of connection.
Yeah.
So taking some deep breaths and just bring your awareness to the body, to the breath. And just letting everything drop through the central spine, down into the earth. The Great Mother, who always holds, nourishes and supports us with such grace. And we give thanks to the star nations, to Grandmother Moon and Grandfather Sun. Grandmother Moon for teaching us about the importance of intuition, receiving, the tides that pull into our women's cycles and bodies. Thank you for teaching us how to trust our intuitions. And we give thanks to Grandfather Sun for holding the balance of action, fire, for teaching us to know the importance of keeping these two aspects of ourselves in balance. Thank you, star nations, ancestors, wisdom teachers, all of those who move around us all the time. May we always be open to receive your blessings, your teachings, and your gifts. And we give thanks to Mother Earth for holding us at this time. We're so grateful that you have the opportunity to breathe. The earth is really breathing at the moment. The skies aren't polluted. The waters are flowing clear. Birds are singing, the animals are becoming more trusting. They're taking their place. Thank you for allowing us this pause in which to see the truth and to realize ourselves. And we give thanks to the spirits of the East who remind us every day that there's always a new beginning, always a new start. Reminding us that it's not possible that we can stay stuck in darkness, and just as the sun rises, so will we. Thank you, Great Eagle, for teaching us how to always hold the higher perspective, flying as high as you do, as close to the sun, warming yourself. May we warm ourselves on the light of the sun right now, in our inner worlds and on the outside. Giving thanks to the spirits of the South for teaching us about the importance of innocence, trust, and play, returning us to that pure essence of childhood spontaneity, freely expressing our emotions, flowing like water. Thank you to the Great Snake for teaching us how to shed these old unwanted skins, especially right now. May every woman in this circle who's listening find the way to really recognize what's no longer working and shed that skin. And we give thanks to the spirits and beings of the West for teaching us about the importance of the body, taking care of our bodies, nourishing and nurturing our bodies, resting well. May we learn from the creatures of hibernation how to be still and become comfortable with that. And may we learn from the creatures of the dream time how to face our own shadows, how to honor and respect our dreams for the messages that they bring from the subconscious realms. Thank you to the herbs, the herbalists, the healers, the midwives, and all those who work with the body. And then we place ourselves in the center of the medicine wheel. And maybe putting your hand on your heart. May the blessing of our heart's wisdom always bow in deference to this greater perspective of our place on this earth. We are here but for a moment in time. May the mind be quieter than the wisdom of the heart, but may they work in tandem to help us grow and evolve, to become sacred humans rather than two-leggeds. Aho.
Aho.
So that was, a brief kind of ninja style closing.
That's so beautiful. It's just so full of hope.
Well, that's all we can ever really have, isn't it? Hope and faith and trust. And like, I'm not investing in anything at the moment that's coming my way that's promulgating fear or holding promises of a new beginning and the dawning of a new age, and because none of us know what it is, and so we just have to stay in the present moment, and it's as simple as that. Oh, look at all this lovely gratitude coming in.
And do you know what? Can I just express my gratitude for you, Steph? What I fucking love about you, and probably what most people love about you, is that you can, take people into such deep spirituality and breathworks and understanding and stuff, but you're just so real, and you just cut through all the bullshit. Like, it's just great. You cut through bullshit vocabulary, and you cut through the bullshit, and that's what makes you just such a brilliant person to do like growth work with, and to touch on shamanism and breathwork and all of these things, so that's such a gift. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
thank you for being in the world.
I'm really glad to be in the world, and thank you, Kate, for all the work you're doing and the way that you're bringing all these gorgeous women together. I love your naturalness and your style. I was listening to you talk before, and I'd just gone really quiet going, I just love the way she talks. Like, you have an ability to bring naturalness. Like, there's so many people that don't do that. So what you reflected to me and what I'm reflecting back to you is like, there isn't an ego structure. There are no gurus. There's no hierarchy, but there are people that we can learn from. There are people that we can be mentored by. There's great humility in being willing to be a student and to know less than, but also we need to really own our own power and know that that's there. And, most of us can smell bullshit.
Yeah.
And when you smell it, you call it. And then, like I say,
and I can just see you, like, the more and more you step into your crone years, you're just going to be more and more like that, and you're just going to be, I mean, you're already badass, but you're just going to be like, fuck that and fuck that, and that's bullshit, and it's going to be brilliant. I can't wait to see you when you're like 103. You're going to be fucking brilliant.
Do you know, my grandma, she lived till she was 100. She died just before she was 101. So there is longevity in our family, and actually that's one of the payoffs, that thing where you can just go, yeah, fuck it, I'm not doing that anymore.
It's that gorgeous crone energy. Fuck it. Oh, so Augusta's just reflected back as well what you just said. She just said the reason you like that in her is because that is in you too, Kate. Oh, thank you for saying that. That's so beautiful. Thank you, Augusta.
It really is. Yeah, it really is, Kate. That's I hope you received that.
And back at all the women in this group as well. Like, they're all just fucking legends. And thank you for showing up to these temple talks and wanting to hear them, and for being with us. My lighting seems to have gone really weird all of a sudden, but perfect timing to end. Thank you, Steph. I fucking love you so much. And I love all the women in the group as well.
It's been wonderful.
Oh, hang on. Just one more thing to say. So if people are interested in breathwork, what do they do? How do they find you?
Oh, well, I run free online sessions every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock BST, British Summertime, which is what we're in now. And then there's lots of information on my Facebook page. Maybe you could pop that in your group.
Yes, absolutely.
My Facebook business page and my website as well. My website needs updating at the moment in terms of the events, but there's still quite a bit on there. And but my Facebook page is always up to date. And yeah, I'd really love to see some of you there. Just come and experience it.
Yes, join Steph for definite. You'll have an amazing time with her breathwork sessions online, and when we get back to being present. And Steph's in Glasgow now, so when you're next in Glastonbury, you'll have to go and pay her a visit, because she's a Manchester mank in Glasgow. So that'll be a treat for all you guys who spend time down there. And also, the last thing I'd like to say is that if people are interested, I am starting another 5-week Sister Circles after this one ends next week. So if you're interested in that, then have a look on my Sister Circle group, and you'll be able to find a whole 5-week new package of Sister Circles to join us together, and we can be all smoochy and cuddly and feminine together again. So thank you, Steph. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So much love. Good night, everybody. Love you all very, very much. Mwah. Thanks, Steph.
Bye.